Well, I'm delighted today to be speaking to Peter Sayers from Strabens Hall. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, David.
So you've been a regular at PCD events, particularly offshore here in Switzerland and in the Channel Islands. But people who've not had the chance to meet you, perhaps you could give a little bit more background around Strabens Hall and particularly what you get out of travelling offshore to Switzerland and Channel Islands and elsewhere where you do business.
Great, yes, sure. So I've been coming to Switzerland regularly now for about 15 years. I was previously a shareholder in a wealth management group that had an office here in Geneva. So that was really the original reason for coming here. Over time, we've developed a business model where we provide a range of services to institutions in Switzerland, particularly private banks and wealth managers, and also the fiduciaries that are located here and in Zurich. And so what we offer is a service suite because we are a fully FCA regulated wealth planning firm. Our HQ is in London, but we typically look after clients that have an international profile. So we deal with a lot of quite complicated cross-border issues for these clients. And of course, Switzerland has the reputation as the private banking centre of the world, and I would agree with that. And as a consequence, clients from all over the world have their assets managed here by all of the private banks that have offices both here and in Zurich. And many of those clients have, or many of those individuals have UK connections. So UK pensions from the time where they were living in the UK property, they have perhaps children or grandchildren living in the UK, even though they may themselves be non-resident. So all of those UK situs assets and UK connections can cause tax issues that need to be addressed.
So you might help a wealth manager where there's a UK pension understand more about that pension and perhaps how the assets could be managed alongside other assets, or look to check it's in a suitable structure. Is that in the pension space how you might support a wealth manager who's over here?
Yes, so typically private banks and wealth managers want to manage assets either directly for a client or within a structure such as a trust or a life assurance wrapper or a pension structure. But typically those private banks or wealth managers, particularly here in Switzerland, can't give advice on pensions, particularly UK pensions, where you need to have advice from a FCA regulated firm such as Strabens Hall. So we're effectively offering an outsourced service. We can work with their clients, do the pension advice, the wealth structuring. If there needs to be a transfer or any kind of new arrangement to set up, we can do that. And the reason the private banks and the wealth managers are very happy to work with us is that we don't have any in-house investment product or proposition. We're a truly independent wealth planning firm, so we don't manage money, and therefore under no circumstances would we compete with the private bank or the wealth manager that we may be working with. And that sets us apart from some of the other firms in our space.
And in terms of looking at pension transfers outside the UK, a lot has changed with Brexit and different factors coming through. But where are we at the moment with something like QROPS, which is transferring a UK pension abroad for those who are become non-resident? What's the latest from that field?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked that, David. I mean, the market is as active as we've ever known it. And when I say the market, I mean the international pensions market, which is basically clients that could be based anywhere in the world, but have either a pension fund in the UK that they might be looking to transfer offshore, if that will give them a better outcome than what they have at the moment. Or we have individuals that have already got pension funds offshore, but they need advice on how to draw down or to optimize the extraction of cash or funds from those plans. So we're agnostic about where the client's resident, and we're agnostic about what they have and what they might need. We're working for the client, and we're only going to make changes to any arrangements that they have if it's in their best interest to do so. Because we work on a fee basis, we're remunerated by fees, and therefore we have no incentive to sell any product or advise on a transfer unless it's in their best interest. But to answer your specific question in relation to QROPs, clearly there's been significant changes in that market, particularly I think the most significant change was 2017 when HMRC introduced a tax charge on all overseas transfers of UK pensions. However, when they introduced that new tax charge, there are a number of exemptions that apply, and most of those exemptions still do apply. So, for example, people living in the EU generally are exempt from that tax charge. So a QROPS solution can still be very interesting for people living in, France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, some of the mainstream European countries. Switzerland is actually problematic because it's not in the EU and it's not an EEA state, and therefore a Swiss resident probably shouldn't transfer to a QROPS because that would trigger the tax charge at source. However, there are always options and there are always things that we can look at. And if a transfer isn't suitable, we will certainly make that recommendation to the client. So, a lot of our work is actually telling people what not to do, rather than just suggesting that they make changes without the justification for doing so.
And are you also seeing insurance products being used, particularly in terms of estate planning in the UK? A lot's changed in respect of property over many years, so that structuring is less and less effective to mitigate tax charges. And I suppose wealth managers and financial advisors here might be aware that if their client needs to pay a large estate tax bill, it comes directly off the portfolio that they're managing. So do you often work to help clients find advice around insurance solutions as well?
Yes, absolutely. So estate planning, inheritance tax planning is a core service of Strabens Hall. We've advised on in this area for many years, and the demand for solutions for estate planning, inheritance tax planning has increased because of changes in tax legislation. So as well as working with private banks and wealth managers, we also have a service suite for offshore fiduciaries. I was in Jersey last week for 3 days, and I'm in Zurich and Geneva this week. So we're meeting with fiduciaries who often are administering structures that own UK property or property in other parts of the world, and where there are contingent tax liabilities within the structure, we can actually be engaged directly by the trustees to advise them either on mitigation strategies to try and reduce the tax liability, or we can arrange life assurance solutions which will fund the tax the tax liability when it arises.
Because they're not able to give that regulated advice. So is that the basis of the proposition for the fiduciary, is that they can bring you in to do a piece that they just can't do by themselves?
Yeah, so if I think about the cases we're working on right now, the first thing that happens is generally a tax advisor will advise the trustees and make them aware of a significant contingent tax liability within a structure that they're looking after. So the tax advisor will probably point out the problem and quantify the problem, but they may not have any ideas for how to deal with that. So we will often come in after the tax advisor with some ideas for either mitigating or funding that liability. And in that scenario, as I say, we will be engaged by the trustees, and they are our client for the purpose of that engagement.
Very interesting. And finally, Peter, I mean, you've been a regular visitor to Switzerland, as you said, over the years. Do you, when you speak to professionals back in London about the opportunity in Switzerland, are you encouraging of others to come out, find out what's going on here? I think there's a lot of activity that's going on that necessarily the London market overlooks, doesn't find out about. And in the course of the conversations I've had over the last few days, there's huge diversity and lots of different regions of the world and clients being looked after. What's your take on travelling into the Swiss market and the opportunity that's here?
Well, firstly, clearly, if you're lucky enough to travel on business, as I do regularly, and if you're lucky enough to be able to choose where you go, because we're lucky in that our clients and the people we work with tend to live in the nice places, such as Switzerland and Monaco
Yeah.
and Luxembourg and so forth. But Switzerland particularly is a fantastic place to come on business with the trains and the reliability of the travel and so on and so forth. Geneva and Zurich are both two of the most beautiful cities you could visit. And there is, it's a great place for networking. Clearly, everyone speaks English, which is advantageous. I mean, I do speak French, but only probably just at a business level. So, we see tremendous opportunities here. Before the pandemic, I would be coming here at least once a quarter, and now things are getting back to normal. That's where we want to be. I'm already booked for the PCD dinner in Zurich in September, so
Wonderful.
Looking forward to that.
Great to talk to you, Peter. Really look forward to sharing this little chat with our members and look forward to seeing you tonight.
Great. Thanks, David. Thanks.